right. Well, welcome everyone. Some of you might have attended my last two sessions. If you could just quickly pop into the chat, it's simple yes or no if you have attended one or two of my master classes from before. I would love to know how many of you are returners. Okay, great. We got some new faces here then. Cool. Well, anyway, so this workshop is presented by Hubspot for Startups. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Hubspot for Startups, we partner closely with accelerators, incubators, VCs, and startup organizations around the world to accelerate and enable growth for startups. So we love startups and entrepreneurs. So in addition to our startup program, we also have a 30 million venture fund that aligns with our mission to help our ecosystem grow better for startups. So some of the things that we provide in addition to our startup program as part of our partnership with Bridge for Billions is that we provide educational resources, webinars, and masterclasses such as this. If you earn under $2 million, if you're under $2 million in funding, and which most of you guys are, and not currently a customer, you get up to 90% off the first year, and 50% off the second, and 25% the rest of your lifetime with HubSpot. If you are $2 million to Series B, it starts at 50% off and then 25% for the rest of your life with HubSpot. It's really easy to apply, and I'm going to send out a link afterwards, or you can just go to hubspot.com/startups. Only takes 2 minutes, and you're under no obligation to purchase. Select Bridge for Billions as your associated partner. And that way you're eligible for the discount, and you're eligible for whatever time you redeem it in. Also, our CRM base level is free, so I would definitely recommend to start there. So a quick intro of myself before jumping into the agenda today and why I am semi-qualified to talk about this stuff. So I'm currently leading partnerships and growth for the HubSpot Startups program based in New York and helping startups grow through mentorship. My background actually started in the financial industry and VC. I was helping early stage startups raise capital when I realized that no matter how much money you invest in a startup, if they don't have a predictable way to grow and scale their revenue, they'll be out of business. So I taught myself marketing and learned everything I needed to know. And in order to scale the accelerator I was managing at the time, as well as the startups we were incubating. Through that process, I became a startup mentor and advisor. So this is a combination of my operating experience and insights I gained from HubSpot. So I really appreciate everyone being involved and engaged as we move along. I'm going to be sharing this deck with you and anyone who wants to email me afterwards. And today's session will be recorded. As an emerging company, there's nothing more important than driving traffic to your website, right? So the easiest way of driving this traffic really begins with having a really great understanding of SEO. In this class, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of SEO, how the search engines work, and will help you choose the right SEO strategy for your business size and for your customers. Then we're going to finish with some strategies on scaling your SEO as a startup and tactics to build authority in search engines. So what's the first thing you do when you need new marketing ideas? What about when you decide it's time to change the way you keep the books finally, or even notice a flat tire in a car? You Google, right? Did you know that 89% of B2B buyers and 81% of online shoppers also do the same? Whenever we're faced with a problem, challenge, or even a choice, we simply Google it. So it's a cold, harsh truth that, without at least some presence in Google, your business isn't likely to survive long. So at the basic level, there are three key processes in delivering search results, which are crawling, indexing, and ranking. And for each of these processes, they can be explained in relation to the process of eventually ranking content. This process can be broken down into discovery, relevancy, and authority. Most of the articles that you read about SEO are only focused on the last part, which is ranking. But there's actually a lot more that goes on before and beyond that. It's important to have a firm grounding in this, because if you fail in the crawling and indexing part of this, the ranking just isn't possible. So the first process that we have is the discovery of new content. Every time you use a search engine, you're looking for content, information on a particular issue or problem. For example, this content might come in different formats. It could be text, like a blog post or a web page, but it could also be a video, product recommendation, and even a business listing. So it's all content. For SEO, it's what helps gain greater search visibility. And there are two reasons why. For one, content is what customers want when searching. Regardless of what they're looking for, it's content that provides it. And the more of it you publish, the higher your chance for greater search visibility. Search engines use contents to determine how to rank a page. Every time you use them, their algorithms choose pages that are the most relevant to your query and then rank them, displaying the most authoritative or popular ones first. It's the idea of relevance between a page and a person's search query. So to deliver the right information to users, search engines analyze two factors: relevancy between the search query and the contents on a page. Search engines assess it by various factors like topic or keywords. Authority measured by a website's popularity on the internet. Google assumes that the more popular a page or resource is, the more valuable is its content to readers. So the technical terms for discovery, relevancy, and authority are crawling, indexing, and ranking. Hold on to these terms because we're going to come back to that throughout. One of the easiest ways to bring this to life is by having the example of a bookstore. A bookstore is the perfect analogy for search engines because everyone that's visiting a bookstore needs to find exactly what they're looking for amongst a wide variety of options in as little time as possible. This is really just like the search engine. In the beginning, you start with a pile of books. And they're unorganized. This is the same with a search engine. They start with a mess of unorganized web pages. Once each of these books from this pile has been looked through, they can then be organized into categories. And it's similar to Google looking through all of the content and determining what it's all about. Finally, once those books have been categorized, they will need to be ranked in the order of importance and popularity. So in order to do this, the bookstore staff will look through and figure out how popular the author is, how many books they've written and that have sold really well, how many times the books have been mentioned in the press. They choose some books to highlight in their best sellers, best reads, or most popular shelves. So the same happens for Google. Once they've categorized their web pages, they need to be able to rank them. If someone searches for cat toys, there will be hundreds of millions of results that have been crawled and indexed. But how does Google decide which one goes to the very top? So similar to the bookstore analogy, Google will look at how many other pages on that domain perform, how many people have visited that web page and that have had a positive experience. These are some of the ranking signals that are at play, and they help search engines to go from discovery and categorizing to ranking the content itself. So a lot of you might have already Googled about SEO and try to figure out the good versus bad SEO advice. This is also important because when people see a drop in traffic to their website, they often believe it's an authority problem when it actually might be a discovery problem, and treat this problem with the wrong solution, which can cause more damage. So let's cut through the noise, bad advice, or some of the things you heard before, and look at the things that you should be looking out for. This isn't to pick on anybody, but these are just some of the examples we've seen pulled up. There's millions of articles out there that apparently tell you all about Google's ranking factors, which isn't entirely accurate because Google keeps their algorithms secret and doesn't release all of this publicly. There are things that we know and things we don't know, but nobody has the complete list of Google's ranking factors. But over time, SEOs have identified some of the factors they consider when ranking a page. Another example that you'll see a lot is advice on improving your Google rankings with sneaky tactics. Keep in mind that SEO is really a process. It's not an overnight trip. So there's no quick step guide to just launch your SEO success overnight. You will see articles that are just about how to rank number one. It's not that simple. If one article can tell you how to rank number one on Google, then everyone would be doing that already. So part of the problem with this advice is that it's just not that simple. These articles assume all websites are the same and all content is the same. They're going to be ranked the same. They all miss the important fact that context is really everything for SEO. Something that might work for one site might have the opposite effects on another. It's also the same for something that might work for one site in terms of ranking right now, might only work for another site later on in their journey once they've developed more and better relevancy and authority on certain topics. What I want you to take away from this is don't read an article and freak out if what you're reading isn't aligned with what you're doing. Don't scrap your strategy. There are fundamental things that are distinctively right or wrong that we'll talk about in SEO, but keep in mind that a lot of this is contextual. So let's go back to the bookstore analogy for just a minute. A new book published by J.K. Rowling is almost certain to go on top of the must-read shelf in the bookstore, right? That's because she's such an authoritative figure in the publishing industry. If you're a brand new author, you have to do something completely spectacular to achieve that same feat. So it's the same when you have a brand new domain. You might have created a page that focuses on the same topic that Wikipedia does, and you might even do it better. But Wikipedia is more likely to rank better than you, at least out of the gates, because you don't have authority or relevancy yet. Essentially, you're the new author in this situation. You have the opportunity to get your ranking higher than Wikipedia from the get-go, but it's just unlikely. So a lot of people think and are told, SEO success should look like this. It's supposed to be an upwards climb and have that hockey stick effect. This is the result of marketing. All of these case studies where they talk about explosive or massive growth, that happens at times. But the reality is that it's more likely to look like this chart. There's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys. Patience is probably the most underrated SEO skill. There are certain things out of your control, such as seasonality, current climate. You can't control if Google shows a feature snippet of how to do X, and it just takes away a bunch of your search results by ranking that page or snippet higher. The most important thing is that, with all these peaks and valleys, there is a trend up into the right. You should be climbing and growing with time. So SEO is really about a long-term play, and you need to start building upon today. Let's talk about how most startups begin their SEO journey. This chart isn't to isolate startups, but a lot of the advice that's given to early stage companies with new websites is just to focus solely on creating a ton of content. So some of you might have been doing this for maybe 5 or 6 months now. You're still seeing flat traffic and wondering why you're not seeing results. So the answer or advice you're told is to keep creating more content. If you imagine applying the same logic to a different problem, for example, a paid acquisition campaign on Facebook. Let's say you spend $5,000 on Facebook ads and see poor ROI. you're not going to just double down on your spend next month and keep everything still the same, right? This is still what a lot of companies still do with SEO. So we're going to cut through this. People might tell you to just create great content and you're eventually going to rank number one. That's saying create a great company, create a great product, and that's just not helpful. Every business is trying to create something great already. I would also say that creating great content is more about on-page SEO or strategy. It's table stakes now. So if you are a fantastic writer and can truly write a best-selling book, but if nobody has the chance to read it, then it may as well not exist. It's the same with the majority of bad SEO advice. It stems from trying to solve an authority problem with a relevancy solution. And to give you an example, I know someone that runs a big content site and they previously had a really successful section of their website, but overnight they lost about 60% of their traffic. So they freaked out and thought it was an authority problem and that they needed to go back to the press to get more links and mentions. But what had really happened was that they used a new functionality with React, which is a form of JavaScript, and Google could no longer see what the content was on their page. So the discovery phase of this broke. Google was just reading a blank page and couldn't determine its relevancy. So it wasn't showing up. But if they try to fix that with an authority problem, with an authority solution, it's not going to help. It's just going to throw the wrong resources at the wrong thing. So my point is use context when troubleshooting. When you're having an SEO problem, take the time to dig into it and see what might be going on behind the scenes. Don't just launch into whatever advice you see on the internet. The reality is that as a new company and domain, you need to work on building your authority. In this case, that means backlinks. Content is incredibly important, but without authority, you're like the brand new author here, but you think you are J.K. Rowling. So you need to build a base level of authority first, which is a minimum level of viability to get you to an authoritative point where you can shift your focus to more content because it's going to benefit you more than just starting to put out a ton of content too early. Pushing more content out quicker isn't necessarily going to help you rank faster. It may even have the opposite effects. So let's talk about scaling SEO in the beginning. But first, let's talk about backlinks. And for those of you who don't know, they are references to your content on other websites. So every time another website mentions and points their readers to your content, you gain a backlink to your site. In SEO, we refer to the process of getting new backlinks as link building, and we're going to talk about that. What is it that you can actually do in the beginning? We talked about the pitfalls and fundamentals of how search engines work, but let's talk about what you can go away with right now with limited resources to get started on SEO as a startup. Let me take a pause here for a second. This is really important. SEO is not just about getting any visitors to the site. You want to attract people who need what you sell and can become leads and later customers. So, however, that's possible only if it ranks for the keywords those people would use when searching. Otherwise, there's no chance they would ever find you. And that's even if your website appeared at the top of the search results. And that's why SEO work starts with discovering what phrases potential buyers enter into search engines. The process typically involves identifying terms and topics relevant to your business, then converting them into initial keywords. And finally, conducting extensive research to uncover more related terms your audience would use. So you want to focus on doing a small number of things really well in the beginning. These are the 3 things I would recommend starting with in the order of priority. Let's take HubSpot for example here. There's a number of different types of transactional keyword-focused pages on our site, and they're catered to the varying intent behind potential searches. This is our main CRM page, and this primarily focuses on people that search for branded queries like HubSpot CRM. There are loads of companies that are trying to replicate what HubSpot's doing, especially startups in the SaaS marketplace. We're seen as authority In the market space, that's true. And the majority of our acquisition funnel comes from organic traffic because we do use an inbound marketing methodology. However, I would caveat this to say we're also a public company. So we have massive exposure that's given to us on a regular basis, stock exchange, Wall Street analysis, the annual inbound event, which is an event with 25,000 people attending each year, a huge marketing spend, thousands of employees, and we have an authoritative website. There are certain structures that you can adopt from HubSpot, but that doesn't mean you can necessarily replicate all of this right now, because as a new company, you might not have the authority to be ranked in the same way as we do. It might take a while to rank this content, but what you need to do is start building out that foundation and build upon it over time, because that's going to give you the results. HubSpot has been around for 13 years, so this has been a long journey that we slowly built on. We have a variety of transactional focused keywords, and they're targeted towards a prospect that's ready to make a direct purchase from HubSpot. This is our main CRM product page. I would start building a core set of pages where people can convert and make revenue for your business. The rest of the content is great, but you need to have pages to help them convert into a sale when they're ready. This page is focused on branded queries, assuming the searchers already know what HubSpot's CRM is and are driven to take the next step towards the sale. So a different type of transactional content that's one level down is content that's focused on a solution that people are searching for. They may not know yet that HubSpot has the solution and may be searching for something like meeting scheduling software. They aren't sure what the solution is yet. This is all part of how you should be thinking about your keywords and phrases. Meeting scheduling software is certainly a keyword and phrase that we purchased, same with HubSpot CRM. And then to move down another level in your transactional content, this is more for people who are in the consideration process. We're trying to provide some comparative content here. We focus on showing the difference between HubSpot CRM and one of our competitors. That way we can capture searches for people who are looking into alternative solutions. This way you can cover all aspects and basis of your service or product with different keywords and phrases, honing in on what people are actually searching for. It's important to have a solid SEO foundation, and when you do and start driving organic traffic, purchasing AdWords is an uplift to your efforts. We're not going to go too deep into AdWords today, but if you only focus on buying AdWords, you will become reliant on continuous marketing spend in order to convert more customers and traffic. That's simply not sustainable as a startup. You need to have two important strategies working for you at once. SEO is an important long game strategy. Start building it and incorporate AdWords and keyword purchasing into it. Alongside transactional content, you also want to build a base of informational content. This is for people who are closer to the beginning of the decision-making process. Transactional content is for when people are ready to make a transaction with you. Informational content is for when people are still gathering information about a potential purchasing decision they make with your products. You don't want to oversell here. You want to meet the needs and solve problems with the solution the searcher wants, not just what you want to show them. And this is very top of the funnel question when they're not ready to buy. Let's take a random example here. Let's say you Google, how to build a shed. With most of us working from home these days doing home projects. Let's talk about how some people just get this wrong as a business. What you're really looking for are instructions on how to build a shed. But what sometimes happens is that you land on a page like this, you're probably going to bounce pretty quickly. It's not what you're looking for. It's not the intent of your search. People make the mistake of selling to their searches as soon as they land on their page. That's not the approach you want to take with informational content. This is more about cultivating them and nurturing them to get there because they're not ready to buy and convert yet. The key to understanding informational content is that this is a journey. You want to show them what it is that they want, not just what you want. Google will penalize you for giving them a negative experience and lower your rank anyway. You might get a lot of views and traffic to your website, but if they're all clicking away and bouncing immediately because it's not what they're looking for or what they want, then it's not an effective long-term strategy. Similar to our transactional content, HubSpot has different levels of informational content. This is branded informational content, almost like an FAQ. We use this to not only educate our customers, but also ourselves to give resources on how to do this for other people. And then the next level of informational content is more general educational content. It's still related to our products offering, but very few people are ready to buy or convert when they're still in this learning phase. This is where we differentiate transactional from informational content. Finally, we have content that solves for an educational need. You can use this to get people to buy into your brand and funnel them into your product at a later date. This is the most common type of content that most people focus on early on. If you're building a ton of informational and educational content with the idea that you're going to generate more traffic over time, that's great from a brand awareness perspective, but you should also consider what your sales setup is here. Don't put all of your resources and calories into putting this out first without nurturing them through to that transactional content. Think about your infrastructure for when they land on your page, whether or not you have the capability to move them towards an automated sales closing process. That's not what we're going to cover a whole lot during today's session, but this is something we've covered a lot in the previous sessions if you attended it. But having an automated sales closing process is incredibly crucial to understand what that funnel looks like from beginning to end. If you're brand new, you might want to focus more on those that are closest to the buying stage now. It all comes down to context and timing. Start somewhere and build it out. So in the beginning of the session, we talked about how search engines work. We talked about discovering is about crawling, determining relevancy is about indexing, and determining authority is about ranking. This strategy here is about building relevancy. This takes deep content and every question that people could possibly have about a topic and internally link it with related content in order to showcase how a whole cluster of content is all related. We learned that external backlinks are extremely important. Linking out to other relevant pages on the topic helps Google determine its topic further. Plus, it provides a really good user experience by positioning your content as a valuable resource. So internal links are also important. Those links help you boost rankings in two ways. One, they allow search engines to find and crawl other pages on the site. And two, they show semantic relations between different pages, helping to determine its relevance to the search query better. As a rule, you should include at least 2 to 4 internal links per blog post. This is an example of a topic cluster within HubSpot. We started with 14,000 blog posts that were unorganized. What that means was our relevancy was actually split in between all of these. Let's take Instagram marketing as an example. Let's say our pillar page is our ultimate guide to Instagram marketing. It links out to all these different pages that go very in depth about each strategy. Each one of these pages also link back to that pillar page. So it shows that it's the core page. It's about how you structure your website in a way that shows the most important piece here. If you want to learn more, Google HubSpot topic clustering to upscale yourself in that area. Let's talk about tactics in building authority in the search engines. How do you get mentions and backlinks to build that authority? So as I said, backlinks matter a lot. People don't anticipate what it takes and how challenging it can be to have a great link building strategy. In SEO, again, we refer to the process of getting new backlinks as link building. This strategy is really fundamental to your SEO success. There's a couple of different tactics You can use community launches are great if you're launching a new product as an early stage company. Launching within communities like Product Hunt, Reddit, Better List can be a great way to drive backlinks and serve as a talking point for gaining exposure within online publications. We do this all the time at HubSpot when we launch a new feature and want to get people ready in advance. This isn't necessarily about driving a lot of traffic to your website, but you might see a spike that may not sustain, but it's a great conversation starter for when you speak to the press. This can be a segue to get you more and reputable links. Another strategy you can use is press requests. It's a great link building tactic for early stages. It can be very challenging to get featured in the press unless you have something that's particularly newsworthy, right? Otherwise, you're unlikely to be on the cover of the Times. But you can have compelling stories combined with the right connections to get linked. Another way to do this is to sign up to get access to press alerts when the press is looking for people or specialists to comment on any one of these topics. They will put out requests to get people to comment. This way you're doing the journalist a favor and building relationships with them to earn coverage and links for later on. Sign up for services like If This, Then That, ifttt.com to get access to press alerts every day. This is another way that you can quickly get some traction. Another great strategy is newsjacking, but this one is a lot tougher. This is focused on building out content that's designed to get pickup and coverage in publications. This is where you can call on those journalists to get them to pick up your content. This is about building out a topical story that's timely and in demand. You need to give advance warning to journalists in order to get it released. And to give you a specific example here, this doesn't need to be something big and expensive. I know a divorce attorney, and they wanted more traffic to their website. What they did was they looked for things that were trending in culture and recurring in divorce filings. At this point, it was 2018. Fortnite, which was a really popular game at that time, it was cited in over 200 divorce papers. So he quickly wrote a post about it, shared it, 400 words, shared it with a load of journalists, and it quickly caught on. You can do this with simple content to get press, pick up, and get creative. This 400-word piece ended up getting featured in BBC, CNBC, courts. It's possible. It's all about creating and working that strategy. They also garnered 2,500 backlinks. This is just one of the tactics you can use. Other tactics such as outreach, guest posting, profile links, and competitive analysis. For outreach, contact other websites for links. This can happen in many ways. You could create an amazing piece of content and email them to tell them about it. In turn, if they find it valuable, they'll reference it. You can also suggest where they could link to it. Guest posts are blog articles that you publish on third-party websites. In turn, those companies usually allow including 1 or 2 links to your website in the content and author bio. For profile links, many websites offer an opportunity to create a link. Online profiles are a good example. When setting up such a profile, you can also list your website there as well. Not all such links carry strong authority, but some might, and given the ease of creating them, they're probably worth pursuing. Finally, many SEOs regularly analyze their competitors' backlinks to identify those they could recreate for their sites too. You also need to understand that when you're doing a search, you aren't really searching a web. You're searching Google's index of the web, or at least as much as they can find. So as a summary, these are the 3 main tasks you should focus on right now. Building out transactional content, building out related informational content, and earning as many mentions and backlinks as possible. So this is where HubSpot fits in, how we help with SEO strategy and why this is a topic we speak about to begin with. we know that it can be difficult to understand which keywords prioritize, how you can get this to drive traffic and conversations. So within HubSpot, you're able to get real recommendations for how to optimize your website for SEO and rank them in priority order, so you can see which optimizations will have the most impact on your performance and which pages need to be updated and actions be taken, so that way you can improve your SEO. As we walk through your topic clustering strategy, there are also tools to help you configure the topics you should be looking at based on the relevance, competition, and popularity. It will link to that monthly search data so you can estimate how ranking for a specific topic is going to translate into actual organic traffic gains, because it's great to rank higher, but everything needs to convert into a sale eventually, which is what you need to focus on. This will help you create these clusters of web pages and blog content around the core topics. This will also help you focus your search authority on which pages you have are the most influential in order to track all of these important topics in one dashboard, so you can see how your traffic is increasing over time. HubSpot is not the only platform that shows you how your SEO traffic is increasing, but it's important that you have some ways of tracking that. Doesn't matter what you use or what tools you're more comfortable with. You can also use HubSpot for reporting on your performance and how you're ranking in search. You can get detailed reports on HubSpot's SEO tools, terms, and topics your searchers are searching for, and where your content ranks in relation to any of these given queries. You can also get data from Google that can be used to inform your SEO strategy. This tells you where your content lands in terms of Google's overall search results, so you can learn what's working and what isn't. And then you want to be able to track, whether within HubSpot or other platforms, you need to track where your sources of organic search are coming from, so you know where to devote your calories to. So first, you need to know where your traffic is coming from. Then you need to get a sense of how your traffic behaves based on the data you have. If they come to your website and bounce immediately, that's probably not a good source of traffic, or the way you're bringing them in is not exactly right. They're coming in with false expectations. You'll be surprised, but when I ask startups about their monthly traffic, sometimes they have no idea or don't know what it is. A lot of people will still know, but have no idea where that traffic is coming from. So you need to make sure you're improving traffic. And what I mean by that is you're bringing more qualified leads and potential customers to your website, as opposed to just increasing site visits. It's not just increasing the amount of the people who come in, but also increasing the quality of the people who come in. And by quality, I mean your buyer persona or target audience, the right people you want to sell to. Your main goal here is to drive brand awareness for the right people. So you need to figure out which channels are not only driving traffic, but also converting customers for you. So with that, that concludes today's session, and I will open up to the group for any questions you might have.
I have a question I can ask you, Emily, if no one else is wanting to ask.
Sure, Phoebe.
So would you say that backlinks are the most powerful form of SEO, or to improve your SEO, or is there something else that's just as powerful?
So that's a great question. Yes, so backlinks are really powerful to improving your overall SEO. If you have great content out there, but you have no backlinks to, you don't have enough backlinks or mentions, it's almost like you're a brand new author. You have a great book, great content, but people don't know about it. And backlinks are really the most crucial way for Google to rank your content, to know whether your content is relevant or have the or have you know what the searchers are searching for.
Great, thank you. And I think we have another question that's just popped up in the chat.
Can we trust the claims of Moz? I honestly, so that's a great question because I am not aware of these SEO tools. So I can't really comment on the accuracy of their data. Unfortunately.
I think something else to remember as well is the algorithms change so quickly and so often. Often the content that's written to rank #1 on Google search, for example, is maybe it's relevant for a small amount of time, but it changes very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point, Phoebe. Just keep in mind that it's not just about creating a lot of content, but you should also create both informational and transactional content in parallel. Have been created. How long does it take for Google to recognize your website? Someone has a question. Once the backlinks and mentions have been created, how long does it take for Google to recognize your website? I would say it should take effect almost immediately. I'm not saying that, you just have like 3 or 4, you just received 3 or 4 backlinks for one of your blog posts, and that immediately increases your ranking. It doesn't necessarily work that way because it also comes down to on-page SEO strategy. So if the content on your blog post is actually relevant for what your searchers are searching for, that's how your ranking gets higher. But with the backlinks and mentions in your blog post, that will help you create more authority. So the content on the on-page SEO helps with your relevancy, but the backlinks and mentions help with your authority. Yes, that's a really great question. So someone has a question about location. Does Google take your location in consideration in ranking your website? Does Google rank content in accordance with the topics in each country? Yes, it does. Google does take your location in consideration in ranking your website. So you may, for instance, you may have a higher ranking for certain countries, whereas your ranking would drop significantly in certain countries. Google does rank content in accordance with the topics in each country. So there's a variety of factors to take into consideration, and location is one of the biggest factors.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, because at Bridge, we always, this is a problem and a challenge we sometimes face because we make content in 2 languages. So that's definitely something you can take into account, because of course a post in English will probably not, well, it won't do so well in a Spanish speaking market, or rank high in a Spanish speaking country. It's unlikely to anyway.
Yeah, that's also a challenge at HubSpot too, because for certain countries, as we all know, they have some content has to be GDPR compliant. So we have a whole team of we have a localization team that works on content strategy for specific countries. Interesting. Someone said that they're getting more inquiries from the USA as opposed to UK where I am. It's very common for a lot of businesses. I have a friend who is a travel startup. They actually have, they actually get a higher ranking in certain cities within Europe as opposed to certain American cities in terms of in terms of page views, and as well as some of the contents they put out in their blog. Any more questions here? Did I miss anything? I'm trying to see. If that's a great question. Someone asks if I'm starting a website, how many articles do I need to have in it? So I think it, so my opinion is that it doesn't necessarily come down to like number of articles, but it boils down to, do you have articles for your transactional content? Do you have articles for your informational content? If you have informational content and then people are interested in converting, or people are getting closer to the beginning of that conversion stage, do you have the transactional content to guide them through? So it comes down to whether you have all of these on your website. So you can have, you can have 50 articles on your website and they're all informational, but it doesn't take them anywhere if they're ready to convert. And, if the site visitors are ready to make a transaction with you. So you have to consider in their buying journey, if they see that article isn't necessarily helping them to convert to get to where they want to be. How many words are advisable per article? That's a great question, because I would say for informational content, you can have more words per article versus transactional content. People have a short attention span, and you don't want to give a ton of information. You don't want to have a ton of information in a transactional article when people aren't necessarily looking for more educational content at that point.
Yeah, I think I would just add, whenever you write an article, there's always two sides, which is you really want to make valuable content that people want to read. And then you really want to optimize every article in every way possible for SEO. And that means in making alt links on photos, for example, making sure you have keywords on the post. So it's not just about how many words or how many articles, but making sure every article you do write is optimized in that way.
Exactly. And like I mentioned earlier, you may be told that, you should probably keep creating content, create as much as possible. Sometimes it's just not helpful. It's not helpful to have a lot of content, but none of that content is relevant to what your target audience is searching for. If none of your content is relevant or has authority for what these search queries are, then it doesn't really help them, and Google won't recognize you for the content you have out there. So it's not just about creating as much content as possible, but it's about optimizing the content you have and making sure that Google can recognize your content for relevancy and authority. And this is for authority. And I just want to stretch that, just make sure you can optimize your authority by gaining as many mentions and backlinks as possible. So with that, if there are no more questions, I'm going to end today's session. And thanks everyone for joining. This is our last session and masterclass of the 3-part webinar series HubSpot Startups has in partnership with Bridge for Billions. This will be shared with you afterwards. Thanks everyone for joining and have a great one.